All right, this is the last substantive topic that I'm going to cover in this series, and that is classroom research focused on your subject area or the teacher's subject area. Perhaps it would be better to have written studying or subject area research. I could have reorganized that perhaps in a little bit better way, but ultimately, what this person is doing isn't looking or is that they're not looking at the learning process or even the teaching process or basic structure of those two components, but they're looking at the subject matter, the curriculum, maybe the activities that are used, and are ultimately being sensitive to the discipline as a dynamic and changing entity. It's not some fixed volume that will never change throughout the duration of your career. So maybe you're taking part in the development of that discipline. So who is most likely to conduct subject area research? Well, most college professors who have active research agendas are doing subject area research. So for example, I'm a psychologist and I look at some psychopathology. So I've looked at different psychological disorders. I've looked at sports psychology and health psychology. So each of those things are maybe a tiny bit applicable to what's going on in the classroom. So like if I have a student who suffered chronic concussions, then my research may help me connect with them. But ultimately, it's not going to help me with most of my students. But what it will help with is the teaching of closed head injuries or acquired brain injuries in contact sport athletes. And so if there's a sports psychology course that wants to have very current research and knowledge of the phenomena we're studying, then my research in the various areas that I do it can be drawn upon to improve the curriculum. But that's hyper specialized, and unless you have usually like a position that pays you to conduct original research in addition to your teaching requirements, it's very difficult to find time to focus on something that isn't directly involved with the classroom. But some teachers might be veteran teachers and they realize that their discipline, their curriculum, is out of date or has some serious errors. I recognized in teacher educators, graduate students who are teachers, they recognize administrative shortcomings or state policy shortcomings. And all of those policies and administrative procedures are based on research. But my students, these graduate students who are teachers, are recognizing that, well, wait a minute, that research doesn't apply to my students, so we need better research. And so it's really neat what some of them are doing. But that can also apply to the curriculum, so the way that something is taught, not simply just administrative policy or state procedures. It could just be we're teaching them using lectures, and I don't think that's the most effective way to do it. I think we can find a different instructional or pedagogical model that we can implement to improve learning achievement. And then, so that's the last one. Teachers and professors who want to focus on improving how their discipline is taught. So here are some of the things that I've already mentioned. Why might you want to do subject area research? You might want to improve the content that's covered or the material that's used. When I first taught general psychology, I was pretty disappointed that I couldn't find a recent textbook that looked at psychology in the most promising light, the light that I see it in. And so I wrote that textbook. So it would have been much easier to just follow an existing textbook because I could just do what's there. I wouldn't have to write anything. I wouldn't have to spend time revising it or editing it or formatting it. But it was important to me to have a resource that I could use for my students, and so I did that. I've also designed and tested methods of instruction, and I've found that some teaching strategies work well with undergraduate students and different ones work well with advanced undergraduate students. When you have maybe a research methods class, you will want to use more like workshops and problem-based learning. if it's an advanced undergraduate course that's a topic that students don't know very well. So if I were to do like the psychology of digital technology or social media or health or even like economics or finance, I think there would have to be a little bit more lecturing combined with like group work and maybe some application. And so based on my own experiences, my observations, and my data collection analysis, I can make a claim for the best research methods, the best teaching methods to employ depending on what topic I'm teaching or what area I'm teaching. So you might find journals devoted to your area of teaching. So maybe you teach middle grades math, and so it might be a middle grades math journal that specializes in how to teach middle grades math. And so you might test your hypothesis about a new teaching method, see how well it works, and then gather that data, assess your hypothesis, and then publish it in a journal. And so you're doing classroom work, but you're also developing curricula for future teachers. And then finally, the whole process of doing research in your classroom or on your subject, in your subject area, so like in psychology, maybe studying personalities by conducting personality inventories and comparing them to some other outcome data to see how personality predicts student success, for example. I could involve students in that, and they could practice the research process, not just learn about personality, but actually use it to conduct a study and then actually have that experimental experience. And so in college, if students design their own studies, we call that a high impact practice. And we have at Albany State and most universities have an undergraduate research institute. Some of them are grant funded, and students can get a stipend to do that research because we recognize that it's a high impact practice, which means it predicts high student achievement outcomes. But in elementary school or middle school or high school, maybe students will participate in a science fair, and they're doing research on maybe your subject area, but they're the ones designing it. They're the ones collecting the data and presenting it on a poster, but all of those things are different avenues into a subject area.